So last time we started to speak about Surat al-Kafirun and the reason for its revelation. It's called Sabab al-Nuzul, the reason for its revelation. Quite a bit of the Quran, there are narrations that describe the reason for its revelation or the reason for its re-revelation, you can say, or use of a particular ayah. There's several ahadith on that, and that's where we get this information from. So just to remind you what we studied last time, Surat al-Kafirun was revealed when the leaders of Makkah, they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they were Mukhtar obviously, and after they ran out of negotiation tactics with him, one of the last negotiation tactics that they used was the Pascal's wager, like I told you. Like, if we were not really sure in what you're preaching, and you don't believe in what we believe, so how about this? You believe in what we believe, and we'll believe in what you believe. So we'll make a deal like that. And this way, if we are right, then we get a share in it, and you get a share in it, and if you're right, you get a share in it, and we get a share in it. Okay, so this is the core, essentially, of the response of this surah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, tell them, Ya ayyuhal kafirun, O disbelievers, O kafirun, O kafirs. Tell them that you are essentially disbelievers. La a'budu ma ta'budun. I don't worship what you worship. Wala antum a'abiduna ma a'bud. And you don't worship what I worship. Wala ana a'abidun ma a'badtum. And I have never been worshipping what you worship. Wala antum a'abiduna ma a'bud. And then this repeats. And you don't worship what I worship. Lakum dinukum waliya din. For you is your religion, for me is mine. Okay. So let's dive into this a little bit deeper, inshallah. So we will park the conversation on who is a kafir and what makes up a kafir and what is ibadah. I don't worship what you worship. So what exactly is worship? What is entailed in ibadah? So we will talk about that, inshallah, later on. So for today, let's talk about this ayah. La a'budu ma ta'budun. I don't worship what you worship. So subhanallah, look at the miraculous nature of this ayah. So in Arabic, ma means what. It's used for something that are things that are not rational. And when you're talking about someone, you say man, which means who. Okay? So the ayah doesn't say la a'budu man ta'budu. I don't worship who you worship. It doesn't say that. It says I don't worship what you worship. It's immediately demeaning whatever they worship, because it is not something rational, it is something irrational. Something that's a thing, like a rock or wood or stone or table or a chair or sky or moon or whatever. It's a thing. So immediately in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Ma ta'budun, what you worship, whatever that is, I don't worship. Okay. So this is clear. So what did they worship? What did they worship? They believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Quran tells us, when you ask them who created you, they say, Allah. So what's the problem? The problem is that they associated worship with Allah with other things. With, in this case, idol worship. And God knows what else they believe, but through the Quran we know they worship the idols, and they worship the idols. Maybe inshallah we'll talk about the details of exactly their practices sometime later on. But one of the reasons they say that they worship the idols is because they are, you can say, shy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they go through the idols to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Islam, we don't have such things. We don't go through somebody to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a concept there, we'll park that to the side for a bit. It's called istighatha, but we will talk about istighatha later on, maybe sometimes. That's a controversial topic. But we will just, in general, we go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. Okay. And there are specific ayat in the Quran which talks about this. For example, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ. That they are ordered to do nothing else except to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely, exclusively. Okay, حُنَفَاء. Sincerely, okay. So we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept ibadah to Him with association with another entity, whatever that might be. Rational or irrational. So that is completely unaccepted. And there's ayat in the Quran, we'll talk about that later when we talk about ibadah. Okay, so just so that we understand what ibadah is. So then he is saying, I don't worship what you worship, which means I don't worship the way you worship. The way you worship. Yes, you worship Allah, but you worship Allah indirectly. وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ. And you don't worship what I worship, who I worship, okay? Or how I worship. And then it repeats, but the wording is slightly different. وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدْتُمْ. And I am not an abid of what you have worshipped. Multiple ways to look at it, we'll break this down in a second. وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ. And then the ayah repeats, لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينِ. Let's today, maybe in the essence of time, let's talk about this repetition. So there are these repetitions, and then scholars have differing opinions of what these repetitions imply. I don't worship what you worship, you don't worship what I worship, I don't worship what you worship, you don't worship, in summary, right? So it repeats twice in a way with slightly different wordings. So some scholars say this is for emphasis. So in the Quran that happens a lot. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats some ayat for emphasis. We all love, for example, Surat al-Rahman, right? فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. That repeats over and over. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. That's repetition. Or al-Qari'atu mal-Qari'a wa ma adraka mal-Qari'a. It just repeats that emphasis, right? So scholars say, and these are all valid opinions, okay? So it is used for emphasis, absolutely. Second thing is, the first two describe, some scholars say, it is the current state. The current state. I don't currently worship what you worship. And you don't currently worship what I worship. And then the next one is future. وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدْتُمْ. And I will never be worshipping what you worship, and you will never worship what I worship. So it's talking about the present and the future. Which, subhanAllah, is so true. The four people that came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you take this meaning, they actually never believed. Because if they believed, the meaning of this ayah actually would become false, and that can't happen. So it is actually a miracle that those four never believed and they died kuffar. So this holds true. Then the third is, this is present, continuous, and past, which is also really, really a beautiful understanding. That the current state of I don't worship what you worship, you don't worship what I worship currently, and I have never been a worshipper of what you worship, and you have never been a worshipper of what I worship. What does that mean? Rasulullah ﷺ never worshipped idols. Astaghfirullah. He never worshipped idols. He was considered one of the Hunafa, Hanif. There was a handful of people in Mecca that were from among the Hunafa. They called themselves that. Wallahu alam, where that name came from. This name is also used in Surat al-Bayyinah. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ. Hanif means someone who was a monotheist, just simply put. Somebody who believes in one God. And there were just a few handful of people. Khadija radiallahu anha, her cousin, Waraqa bin Nawfal, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Abu Bakr, it is said, he was from the Hunafa. There were a handful of Hunafa that did not do any idol worshiping. So this ayah then again holds true. I have never been a worshipper of what you have worshipped in the past. So that's the meaning, the second meaning. And then there's another meaning which talks about action versus belief. So action as in, I will never act in worship of another entity other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or do any kind of shirk, right? The second time, the scholars say, this is I think Ibn Taymiyyah's opinion, the second thing is about belief. So outwardly, I'm not worshipping, neither inwardly I have any belief. Okay, so one is about fi'l, and the other is about iman. One is about, I guess you can say, the Islam part, and the other is the iman part. And the fifth opinion rather, is the who and the how, which we kind of alluded to in the beginning, that I don't worship what you worship, I worship Allah, the who. So who I worship. And the second time it repeats, وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدْتُمْ, it means I don't worship the way you worship. Right? Obviously, worshipping Allah, you know it's an idea, it's a concept, right? But then that has to followed up by action. How you actually worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They didn't do salah, they didn't do sawm or zakat, or they didn't do even tawaf the way the tawaf is supposed to be done, etc., etc., etc. So it's as if all of these meanings apply, and subhanAllah, these are beautiful opinions from the scholars. And the last thing I will say, just a few virtues of Surat al-Kafirun. Did you know when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited Surat al-Kafirun? So there's few occasions where he almost always recited Surat al-Kafirun. And Surat al-Kafirun and Surat al-Ikhlas, as we talked about last time, are pair surahs. They go together. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Sunnah of Fajr recited Surat al-Kafirun and Surat al-Ikhlas. So Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun and Qul huwallahu ahad. He did the same for the Sunnah of Maghrib. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ, and قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. So just remember, this is when this Rasulullah ﷺ is reported to have read those. Also in Qiyamul Layl, the Rasulullah ﷺ prayed tahajjud every night. In Qiyamul Layl, it is reported, he started 2 rak'ahs of Qiyamul Layl with قُلْ يَا الْكَافِرُونَ and Surat al-Ikhlas, and he ended the witr, he recited Surat al-A'la, Sabbih isma rabbika al-A'la. Second rak'ah, قُلْ يَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Third rak'ah, Surat al-Ikhlas, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. And also there's other occasions as well where this is recited, and it is reported that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recommended that you read Surat al-Kafirun before you go to sleep. Again, why is this important? Because the ultimate objective of us as Muslims is the ibadah of Allah. This surah is all about worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely, alone, without any partnership, the way He taught us of how He should be worshipped subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Barakallahu feekum.